Bobby Nixon, our first presenter, is Associate Professor of Iberian Cultures and Literatures at Columbus State University in Georgia, and his research has included cinematic representations of the Iberian Middle Ages and subversive filmmaking during the Franco dictatorship. He's currently working on a project that focuses on Lorca in Spanish film, and he's collaborating with the Spanish Filmoteca to help restore a 1935 film featuring Mexican actress Lupita Tovar. That sounds so interesting. Bobby, take it away.
Okay, thank you. So I did prepare this in English. I thought about that. Can everyone see the PowerPoint fine?
Yep.
Oh, okay, great. So the title of this presentation is Los Atracadores by Francisco Rovira-Beleta, 1962, an exceptional instance of Francoist Proto-Noir. Many critics have alleged that neither neorealism nor film noir ever truly existed in Spanish cinema during the Franco period due to censorship and an inability to portray the dictatorship as flawed in any manner, whether it be the inability of the police and military to competently maintain order or that of the dictatorship to adequately provide food and shelter for the people. Los Atracadores must also portray the police as victorious and ultimately provide punishment to all criminals. Yet there are numerous subversive episodes and comments that portray violence, allude to sex, offer a poignant critique of Spanish society, including the family, the legal system, the death penalty, guns, and even the church, and they surprisingly manage to slip through in both the novel and the film. Both examine the psyche of the three main characters who commit crimes in search of meaning for their own lives rather than out of greed or necessity. Although the text is narrated in the third person, the reader identifies with the three juvenile delinquents rather than with a police force. The film closely follows the novel by Tomas Salvador, and according to Javier Sanchez Zapatero, he showed that it was in fact possible to write a police novel in Spain during the Franco dictatorship. This novel was from 1955, and here I have some images, some lobby cards from the film, and you can see how in these lobby cards for Los Atracadores, the emphasis is on the punishment of the criminal, no glamorizing of the crime whatsoever. And in the second film, A Tiro Limpio, which came out a year later, Francisco Pérez Dos was actually the co-director of, or the assistant director of Los Atracadores. You see that same image. However, when you look at posters and lobby cards from other countries, here, France and Italy, you see a much greater emphasis on the violence and the sex, as well as the punishment by strangulation of one of the criminals on the left. It was even released in Finland, and you can see that here it has much more of a noir look. The novel, as I mentioned, was published in 1955, and the cover today looks comical, right? It reminds me of the old Hardy Boys books with the three boys there, and even the modern publication or the contemporary publication isn't that different, where you just see the silhouette. But this is the author here in the middle, Tomas Salvador. The author joined the Republican forces in 1938 at age 17, and although he never saw battle, he was taken prisoner by Franco's troops in Guadalajara. Tomas would join the División Azul in 1941, possibly out of fear of being punished for his earlier activities. Upon his return, he became an inspector with the secret police in Barcelona, an experience that would greatly influence his work as a writer. Despite having been at the Russian front, the writer Francisco Candel claims that he was actually a very liberal person who even helped out other writers that were threatened by the police. Critic Rob Stone in 2007 states that there is no such thing as Spanish film noir. Spain had no tradition of hard-boiled fiction, and few translations of American noir existed, so there was no possibility of film noir rising from literary adaptation. Only urban thrillers turned policíacos that detailed the diligent police work as tokenistic illustration of the long arm of Francoist law. As what he calls proto-noir, the policíaca would always be stunted, suffering from prescribed righteousness where a moral vacuum was needed. I would claim, though, that Los Atracadores is one of the few examples, and perhaps the best, of a cinematic adaptation of a Spanish crime novel, as most relied on original scripts. So what is noir? In the first key text on film noir, Board and Chomtan in 1955, the same year, list the adjectives for its characteristics as nightmarish, weird, erotic, ambivalent, and cruel. Noir film is a film of death. Sordidly or bizarrely, death always comes at the end of a tortured journey. There must be moral retribution, punishment, or repentance. The victims are also ambiguous and under suspicion to some extent. For Jose Luque Carreras, 2015, Spanish Noir can only be narrated from the point of view of the police. There must be no admission of the existence of delinquents in Franco's victorious Spain. This is why there is frequently a message at the start of each film, directed more towards the censors rather than the viewers, to communicate the purpose of the story. For Board and Chomtan, the aim of film noir was to create a specific alienation. Robert Porfirio agreed that the noir hero is alienated and as an individual must choose between being and nothingness, between the authentic and inauthentic life. The unauthentic life is the unquestioned one which derives its rationale from a facile acceptance of those values external to the self. For James Narramore, 1995, film noir is both an important cinematic legacy and an idea we have projected onto the past, though the term is also associated with certain visual and narrative traits, which some commentators have tried to localize in the period between 1941 and 1958, specifically between The Maltese Falcon and Touch of Evil. 3 different texts on Spanish noir have placed it, however, between 1950 and 1965, 40 years later. Luque Carreras notes that in the second period of Spanish noir, 58 to 65, we see a country that is beginning to experience greater economic prosperity. The films are used to show a nation that is open to tourism and is ready to do business with the outside world. The criminals are now more complex figures that figure more prominently in the narrative. Imogene Sarah Smith, in her study of film noir beyond the city, notes that below the surface, the force driving noir is the urge to escape from the past, from the law, from the ordinary, from poverty, from constricting relationships, from the limitations of the self. Film noir is about people who break the rules, pursuing their own interest outside the boundaries of decent society, and about how they are destroyed by society or by themselves. Noir demonstrated that crime doesn't pay and that the wages of sin are death, but along the way made audiences identify with flawed or unscrupulous characters. In Spanish noir, the private detective and the femme fatale are notably absent. For Luque Carreras, he is not allowed in Spanish film because his main function is to solve cases that the police were unable to by their own means. When there is a femme fatale in Spanish noir, she was always played by a foreign actress. The 3 main characters in Los Atracadores frequent movie theaters that project Hollywood noir and gangster films. Vidal takes them to see a movie called El Demonio de las Armas, which is gun crazy, from 1950. Ramon responds that the movie was good. It ended like they all do, with the punishment of the bad guys. If it did not, they would not allow it to go through. In the end, they killed them both in the countryside, a foreshadowing of what is to come for them. Nonetheless, Vidal is not afraid. He believes that an intelligent criminal can go further than a wise cop. They went back to the cinema and saw Criss Cross, The Third Man, Highway 301, The Killers, and The Rise and Fall of Lex Diamond, and many others that he could not recall, all film noir. Javier Sanchez Zapatero notes that unlike other Spanish juvenile delinquent films of this period, Los Atracadores does belong, at least stylistically, to the noir genre. It has an urban character, location shots, night scenes, and environments associated with the genre, such as the port, dark alleys, bars, etc. He advocates the need to do away with the idea that there are no Spanish noir films during the years of the dictatorship. Elena Medina observes that delinquents in Spain in Spanish noir form gangs that are always independent and never part of organized crime. They do not have confrontations with rival gangs. So just some images. This is, of course, the director of the film, and then some other juvenile delinquent films, famously The Wild One with Marlon Brando, Blackbird Jungle, Crime in the Streets with John Cassavetes, The Delinquents, and then The Young Savages. Of course, in Spain, you also have Los Golfos, which is called The Delinquents in English. The setting for Los Atracadores is Barcelona, with descriptions of the port, the working class neighborhoods, as well as high society residences and elegant parties. Juan Andrés Pedrero Santos saw that films produced in Barcelona tended to emulate Hollywood cinema with the inclusion of professional gangs of delinquents more than those produced in Madrid. The 3 robbers, or atracadores, are known as Los Corteses by the police because they always thank their victims. The first one is is seen here. El Señorito, also called Vidal Ajuste. He is the leader, and he commits crimes almost for sport. As the child of a wealthy lawyer, he does not believe that there will ever be consequences for him in life. A law student at the university, he also lives a double life when he is away from the gang. He lives with his mother and father in a luxurious apartment that is unknown to the others. He is described as really tall and slender. His nose, hands, hair, and eyelashes were all long, almost feminine. He never looked directly at anyone. None of the critique that I have read about this novel or film touches the subject of Vidal's sexual awkwardness. In the book, women are repulsed by him, and he has many nervous tics. However, in the film, he is played by a handsome actor, and many women are attracted to him. He also has several successful dates with Ramon's sister, Isabel, unlike in the novel, where he cannot even approach her. He ultimately rejects her, even in the film, stating that if he had met her earlier, he could have changed, but now it is too late. The novel reads, El Señorito was a complete idiot in front of girls. He became frighteningly timid, his ears perked up, his whole body shook, and he became mute. Frequently after trying to speak with them, he would grab his head and groan out loud in frustration. El Señorito was not able to speak to nor be intimate with women, and it drove him crazy that his father was married and maintained a lover named Asuncion in a separate apartment across from their hideout. Every woman that he saw on the street was Asuncion in his mind. After leaving a posh party with his parents, El Señorito looks in the newspaper for information of their crimes. When Ramon asks him about the man that they had beaten up, he responds, "Don't think about him. He wasn't even a man. There are people that are worth absolutely nothing in life. They don't do anything and they have no rights." For Sanchez Zapatero, this lack of concern for human life and his belief in his superiority over those around him is a reflection of the fascist environment in which he was raised. And you can see Vidal and Isabel are both played by French actors in this film. And then, of course, here he is at the dinner party. The second character here on the left is Chico Ramon. He is a factory worker and an amateur soccer player, so he stays in good physical shape. He also lives with his parents and his brother Anselmo and sister Isabel. The narrator tells us that Ramon's father inflates balloons in a department store. He previously worked in a factory, but he lost his job when Franco visited and saw him sitting down. Vidal teases Ramon that he will never amount to anything in soccer because he is already too old. He also confided in Carmelo, seen on the left, that he longed to destroy Ramon's athletic body. He marveled at how easy it was to corrupt a man. Carmelo is known as Compare Cachas. He is a young man that was thrown out of his home and who suffers from mental anguish. He is obsessed with owning a pistol, drinking, and watching gangster films, and he is unable to grasp the impact of his own violent actions. He is not very smart and occasionally drooled. We also learn from the literary text that his father threw him out many different times, perhaps because he was now afraid to punish him physically, even though Compare had never struck back at him. For a while, he slept on the stairwell or stayed in a flat that was in the building that was being renovated, and his stepmother would bring him some bread and meat each day. After the tenants returned, though, he had to sleep on the streets for 2 months. In the novel, the characters share several conversations that reveal their psychology, such as how they all think about death, but never their own. Before we thought about life, we already knew about death, and they would have been small children during the war. For Vidal, the only things that are worthwhile are what you yourself create. He feels no remorse, and crime for him is an intellectual exercise, as for, with the characters in Hitchcock's Rope or Richard Fleischer's Compulsion. Life is not what we are, it's what we dream of being, according to Vidal. In this film, we see a police report already letting us know that Carmelo will be executed by strangling. We also have a heterodiegetic narrator who provides the setting. It is dawn, but he is dead. He was just a kid. When they pay for their offenses, they will also have to pay for ours. The film and novel open with Ramon running after leaving his factory job. He has no destination, rather he needs to escape from his daily routines. This scene foreshadows his downfall at the end of the text, where he must run from the police. Their first criminal act is when they assault a couple on the beach. Compare and Ramon give him a beating, but Vidal just watches. Ramon doesn't understand why they have done this, but he impresses Vidal with his athleticism. Vidal announces that they are going to form a gang and start doing things seriously. They next attack a night watchman violently and nearly kill him, all to steal his pistol for Compare. El Señorito is going to hang on to the pistol. He insists that they cannot spend the money once they rob it so as not to raise suspicions. Vidal announces that their next act will be to strike a pharmacy as a rehearsal for something bigger. In the film, they split up the money in a graveyard. Compare's clothes are wrinkled from having slept in them, and Vidal wears his familiar Lacoste polo. Unexpectedly, he makes Ramon punch Carmelo in the face, demonstrating his ability to easily manipulate and corrupt others. Next, El Señorito decides to hold up their favorite cinema. He orders Compare to shoot the manager when he reaches for a gun in a drawer. He shoots him next to his eye, and Vidal only stands there smiling in the midst of the carnage. He tells the others that they are now all bound together because they have killed a man and there is no turning back. In the film, Ramon, however, is conflicted and promises that he will never kill anyone. He longs to enter the service and continue playing soccer. He asks Compare if he thinks about the man he killed, but he responds that when he killed him, it was over too quickly. He would have liked to have enjoyed it longer. Their hideout is a studio apartment that Vidal's family uses for storage. Compare arrives there with cognac, and they get drunk and later decide to go out on the street to solicit a prostitute. El Señorito did not go with him. When they return to the apartment with a woman named Marilu, he won't open the door. He's afraid of women. Ramon's sister Isabel, after this, suddenly becomes deathly sick with pneumonia. Ramon had to search hard on the black market for penicillin since, as the narrator explains, they did not produce it in Spain. And this is when they had found her body on the beach. We learn that she and her friends had visited the Mago Bisbe, a fortune teller, and that they were naked, breathing in the smoke from herbs for 3 hours in hopes that El Señorito might fall in love with her. She was looking for a boyfriend for El Señorito. When the three Atracadores visit the shop, Ramon knew that the other two would not be content to merely beat up and frighten the elderly couple. In the film, they had drugged Isabel and sent her off in a car with an older man in a convertible. When he tries to kiss her in the car, she flees and runs down the embankment to the sea, hitting her head on a rock and remaining nearly unconscious in shallow water. When she recovers, Ramon feels absolute guilt at seeing the bodies of the two victims in the newspaper, seen here. After every holdup, they agree to take time off. But Vidal always convinces Ramon to participate in one more robbery because he will need the money for the future. Before retiring, Vidal plans to rob a brothel called the Hotel Pájaro Azul. He thought about the women he might catch in the act, and upon arriving, he enters a room and finds a man his age whom he threatens with a naked woman. In the end, they kill one guest who tried to defend his wife. In the film, this is portrayed quite violently. The man pushes Compare down the stairs to protect his wife from him, and Vidal shoots him in the face before he is shot again by Compare in the stomach. Rovira-Beleta noted that the scenes of the Mago Bisbe, the attack on the night watchman, and the holdup of the hotel were all based on real-life events from the 1940s. And in the novel, they are discovered after Vidal's father arrives home with a police inspector. He is there about the missing pistol that he had received from a client he had represented. Robert Porfirio states that if you look at the plot of almost any film noir, you become aware of the significant role played by blind chance that leads to the criminal's capture. Although Vidal and Carmelo decide to dump their weapons and the jewels from the hotel robbery in the sea, the police have already traced the bullets to the pistol that was taken from El Señorito's father. At the end, Ramon believes that he is beginning a new life and feels hopeful at his soccer match, where several scouts have come to watch him play. Unfortunately, Vidal and Carmelo decide to show up, and it is there that the police attempt to make their arrest. This is where the novel and the film most differ. The author narrates each of the three stories separately, but in the film, the actions occur simultaneously. Carmelo does not see the policeman, so he is seized immediately. However, both Ramon and Vidal attempt to flee. In the novel, Ramon is shot and killed by the police, but in the film, he is hit by a truck as he runs away. As the only member that had not committed murder, he is only sentenced to 30 years of prison. Vidal arrives at the hideout, but the police are already there, so he crosses the street to the apartment of his father's paramour, Asuncion Montal. In the novel, he ingests a venomous liquid that his father used to develop photos, and the narrator relates with meticulous detail the mental state of his slow and very painful death. This was deemed not cinematic, so in the film, he is riddled with bullets, as is typical in noir of 1930s gangster films, as his father Alfredo and his lover look on. Sanchez Zapatero observes that by not allowing Vidal to commit suicide in the film, he receives his punishment from the forces of Francoism. As Carmelo, and the last victim, as Carmelo awaits trial and execution, he thinks of the elderly widow Matilde from whom he rented a room. He felt true affection for her and was worried about her poverty and loneliness after his death. His lawyer is to be Vidal's father, and he uses the opportunity to make a speech about he and Spanish society are to blame for what has occurred. They have inherited our generation's failures. He observed that Carmelo only changed his personality when he had a gun in his hand. My son told him to fire, and he did. In reality, we all gave the order. He is very calm and prepared to die as he awaits execution, though when a man places a hood over his head, he is visibly afraid and begins to tremble. In the film, a priest tells him to have faith and die like a Christian. He hugs a crucifix as he is executed. Compare is shaking violently when they place the ring around the hood. The executioner holds the pressure on the bar, but it took 20 minutes to kill him. The coroner said it was even longer. In the film, though, it is only an instant. We see his arms drop at his side after we hear the crack of his neck breaking. The end. Rovira-Beleta showed Compare after he had been executed in order to denounce the death penalty in 1962. Capital punishment was not banned in Spain until 1978. In conclusion, both the novel and the film deserve a reappraisal as texts that successfully communicate the anguish of dissatisfied youths during the first years of Spain's openness towards development, tourism, and international investment, as well as presenting a visual acknowledgement of an existential crisis of youth and a lack of morals among those who were charged with rearing them to be model Francoist subjects.